Well, hello there. My name's Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. and today I'm on the property. We just finished doing this truck. It's getting ready to leave. We've got this '03 Ford Escape in here. We're just charging the battery. It sat this whole last year. We didn't have a use for it, so it just sat, so the battery went dead. But we've got two exhaust sensors that we need to replace on this vehicle because they're going to sell it and we want it in good shape when we do. And then outside, we've got this project going that you guys will get to see more of. And it's I'm retrofitting an old barbecue grill with a different style top made out of pallets, so we can use it over at our fire pit area. And in the meantime, I'm doing some gardening in a way, working on the watering. But what I'm wanting to show you today more than any of that is how to very affordably make very high quality garden fertilizer, even in large amounts. This is a standard trash can, just a plastic trash can, pretty affordable, and you can get them in a lot of hardware stores. Kept the lid for it, and in the bottom you can see the remnants from last year's. And this is just a 5-gallon bucket with a bunch of holes drilled in the bottom and a rock in it, all very affordable. So comfrey, this plant right here, is easy to grow. You know, if you have one comfrey plant, you can break off parts of the root and throw them in the ground any place you want and they'll grow. So it's very easy to multiply this plant, and it grows pretty darn fast. And you can tear off large segments of it. You can tear it down to the ground as long as you don't pull up the roots, and it'll just regrow. And so what it's really good for is this trick I'm going to show you, which you take this comfrey and you take these leaves and you do what I just did, but you do it a bunch. And then you bring all your leaves, bundles and bundles of them, wheelbarrows full maybe, and you throw them in this bucket. Now, here's some motherwort. You could use that, you know, and you could use regular weeds. Every time you go through your garden and pull weeds, save them, throw them aside. Even with that little tiny bit of dirt on the bottom, that's not going to hurt a thing. And then like rhubarb leaves, they've got a lot of greenery to add to this. And what we're trying to do ultimately, we're trying to create a pond water situation, pond water kind of slurry, where you'll know when you have it right, because it'll look like pond water and it will stink like the worst pond water you've ever smelled. And that's why this trash can is clear out here in the garden, clear away from everything, clear against the fence, because even with the lid on it, you know, we don't want to smell it. If you have a tiny yard, just make sure you have a good lid. But if you have a tiny yard, there's no reason to be cultivating this much of this, because this is also quite concentrated. You don't just pump it straight out of here and throw it on the garden. You dilute it 10 to 1 when you're done. So one cup, you know, just get a cup and dip it in there, is going to go with 10 more cups of water, and that's your fertilizer. Otherwise it's strong. When you get it right and you get it ready, it's strong. And that's why this 50 gallons right here, we just replenish throughout the summer a few times, and we'll use it for all of our gardens. And for most people's normal gardens that aren't market gardens or whatever, they're just most normal people, you know, the place where most normal people grow in their backyard or whatever, they can do this in a 5-gallon bucket all day long. So here we've got just some in the bottom of this wheelbarrow, and it's a decent start. We're going to want more than this to really kind of supercharge what we're doing here. But right here is a full-grown comfrey, and they'll get even bigger than this. If you let them, they'll get bushier and bigger. But when they start getting these flowers, don't just come through with your loppers and chop them off. What you want to do is you want to start at the bottom, and you want to find these leaves that don't look like they're in good shape anyway, like this guy, and leaves that are obviously gone, like these guys. That's what you want to do. You want to start at the bottom, get a lot of these, you know, and then see, this one's quite full of holes and big enough that critters can more easily get from the ground up to the upper levels. Anything touching the ground is slightly at risk, and they tend to have more holes anyway. So we get rid of all those, and we work our way around until we thinned, a third to half of the leaves off, but none of the flowers, because your pollinators love those, and you want to keep your garden full of pollinators. It just makes sense. All right, so we've got predominantly comfrey. We've got a lot of comfrey plants, and that's what we did. We started with just 1 or 2, and then we would separate them out and break off parts of the roots and plant them all over the place, and now we've got dozens of them. And so I just went through, and you can see most of what I cleaned up was just leaves that are really they're already on their way to doing the process we need them to do. So they're actually going to be a little better for this. We got a lot of wilted leaves that are just about done. And now that I've got them all cleaned up, got about half a wheelbarrow full. This is about a 45-gallon trash can, and that amount's going to work really good in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all these leaves in there, and then we're going to put this bucket in there, and then we're going to tie a string to the end of the handle and run it outside and leave it hanging with a little weight on it, so it just stays there all the time, so we can grab it, pull the bucket up out of there, because the bucket is going to be weighing down all these leaves so they don't just float in here. So that bucket is big enough around that when we set it in there, it'll weigh down all of these leaves and keep most of them, the vast majority of them. Only a few of them will be floating, if any. And that'll sit in there, and it'll sit under the water, and it'll begin to do its process. So now I have it all in there, and I don't have it shoved down hard, but you can see it's a third to half full, and if I shove it down really hard, it'd be a quarter to a third full. And then I'll fill this with water up to about here, and then I'll tie a string on this handle, put that bucket in there, so that's why the holes are in the bucket, so the rock can weigh it down, and it'll just fill up with water, and you won't even see it in there. And then when the time comes to put more in, we'll just grab the string, we'll pull the bucket up out of there, we'll put more leaves in, we'll put the bucket back on top of it, because we'll just keep doing this all summer. Okay, so I've got this trash can mostly full of water, but I went ahead and shut the water off because I want to show you a key ingredient that you can use to really help the health of what you're trying to do here. Now, most ponds do what they do quite naturally, and they decompose the matter that falls in them and that's around them, and all that green matter gets decomposed, and that's why ponds tend to smell a little bit and that sort of thing. Is that's that bacteria that can live there. And all we're going to do is we're going to create the same thing, and it will happen much the same way, but we can have it happen at a much faster rate, and we could have it at a much healthier cycle in a way that we know for sure we've got the right bacteria in there, and it's moving along at the rate that we want. And that is, you probably can't read it, but blackstrap molasses. And you don't need to go buy a big jug of blackstrap molasses, but we do a lot of this, so we do. But you can use table sugar, you can use brown sugar. A lot of people use brown sugar. There's a few different ways you can do it, but all we're doing is we're feeding that bacteria some sugar so it can do its job and do it well and do it efficiently. So that's all we're trying to do here. And so I'll put I would say a cup or two, a good glug of it in this to start with. And in a couple weeks, we'll go ahead and fish our first batches out of here and fertilize the whole garden. And when we do that, we'll put some more leaf matter back in and fill it back up, and we'll go ahead and put another glug of molasses in at that time, or maybe even a month. You only have to do it 2 or 3 times a summer, and we'll have enough fertilizer for the whole garden for the whole year just doing it this way. Now, I'm aware most gardens aren't quite as demanding as ours. I mean, I haven't shown it on video, but we have a lot of garden here. We grow a lot of food here. We eat our food literally year round, so we take it pretty seriously. That's why we have these larger amounts of stuff. We're as big as a lot of market gardens are, but most people aren't. So you take your 5-gallon bucket, not one with holes in it, not one with a rock in it necessarily, and you get a coffee can and you put holes in the bottom of it, and you put a couple rocks or some gravel in it to weigh it down, and you fill the bottom third of this or half of this up with leaves and put some water in it and set her out in the sun, put a lid on it, and weigh the leaves down with your coffee can that's got rocks in it. And then you wait a few weeks, and what you'll have is 5 gallons of fertilizer. Now, mix 10 to 1, that's 50 gallons of high quality fertilizer you can put on your garden that you didn't pay anything for. If you don't wish to, you can buy sugar and kind of help the process, and that's what we do, but you don't have to. And that's a good way of going about it. That's 50 gallons of fertilizer right there. All right, so here it is, filled up with water. And I've got my string tied onto the handle. I'm gonna go get a stick or just something, some sort of weight for the other end of it, and tie it right in the end of it so it hangs out of the outside of this where I can easily access it. And so now I've got my bucket. Go ahead and set it in there. We'll take down as many of these leaves as possible with it. Takes just a little longer to fill up because it's got a bed of leaves that it's pressed against on the bottom. But you can see when you're done, there's going to be less than 10 leaves on top, and everything else is going to be down there underneath the surface. And the water's already brown because of the amount of dirt that came with some of these weeds, but mostly because of that molasses. Now here's my string in here, and I'll leave that out the side, and I'll tie a weight on the end, although I don't think I'll need it here, at least at first, because there's a bunch of greenery in here. This is going to make for some pretty rich fertilizer. And you can see the bucket's basically disappeared. There's only a few leaves floating on top. We'll grab this, we'll put it on here, snap down the sides here when I had both my hands freed up, and then we just wait in a couple weeks. All right, so it's been about 2 weeks, and we're back here at this trash can here full of fertilizer. It hasn't been particularly warm. In fact, it's been the coolest spring we've had in a long time. And it's still completely done its job, and it's only been about 2 weeks, give or take a day or two. And I'll show you what this looks like now. Now, here's what you can expect to find when you open it up, and look. Look at that. Downright gross. I mean, downright disgusting. And it smells even worse. It smells absolutely putrid, like the strongest pond you've ever smelled. And that is what you want. Now, remember, you don't just put that on your garden. That is way too potent. You want to mix it about 10 to 1. And the way you do that is you get a container that you don't care about, that you can use just for this. Then put it in your, well, along with your garden supplies, wherever you keep those, and just keep that container. It doesn't have to have a specific measurement on it. What you do is you take a container, like a cup of any sort that you want to use just for this, and then take it, fill it up all the way to the top 10 times. Pour it into your watering bucket. See where that line is. Make a line on it if you want. At 10. Then put the water in there every single time up to that point, and then fill that same cup up just one time with the fertilizer. Dump it in there, mix everything up. That's 10 to 1. It's a total of 11. And at that point, it's mixed up enough and diluted enough you can put it on your garden. And this is going to be fertilizer that it's not going to be the very best fertilizer that money could ever buy, but it is good fertilizer, and it does a lot for microbes and soil health. So it's going to be very helpful and very affordable. So I'll show you what I use when I mix it up. Here's just a yogurt container, and I filled it up 10 times, put it in this bucket, and it fills it over. I didn't do it just this time, but that's the way I did it to know how much I was going to initially need, to know if I could even fit 11 in there. And you can. So I filled this up 10 times, put it in there, then I'll fill it up one time out of here. And wear gloves, because this stuff is nasty. So then you dip it in here, pour it in here, but I pour it in here first. I do this first, then I put the 10 cups on top of it, especially if you've marked the inside of your container. Then you just fill it up. If you mark the inside of your container, though, you have to mark it at 11 if you're doing it in the other order. That way you know exactly what to fill it up to. And at that point, just the water being poured in it mixes it up enough. So there you have it. If you're on a limited budget, or you just want to use what you know to be all 100% natural organic ingredients in your fertilizer, and you want to do it for no money, that's a good way to do it. See you guys around.